Hello everyone, welcome to the Hylian Gamescast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Andi Gibson, who plays old and young Impa. Andi, for those who may not know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to let them know what you've done outside of Zelda, because they may be more familiar with some of your other work if they haven't played Hyrule Warriors just yet.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm Andi Gibson, and I started voiceover in commercial, doing craft and different things. I've done several spots for Airbnb, often in a different accent. But other games, I was the tree in the remake of The Secret of Mana.
Oh.
And let's see, I played the parodies of Kim Kardashian, Madonna, and Paris Hilton in the sequel to the Shaq Fu game, Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn, which a lot of you that played it may not know because they accidentally left me off the credits. But I hope that they finally fixed that with a patch or something.
Oh no.
I know, it was kind of a bummer, but that was a fun game, and it took a long time to come out and all that. Let's see, I played Joy Hayden in Sinking City, and I played a handful, maybe 5 or so different characters in the Bear With Me series, 1, 2, and 3. I played a British character named Alison Soto in the Dead Reckoning games, 1 and 2, I think. I hope I'm getting that title right. Just kind of do the work and then go on to the next thing. So I have to write them down or I forget, and I'll go back and look at my little resume thing and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So right. I remembered in my first interview, I was like, oh, I left off the Mana Tree, which I know not everybody really loved that game, that remake all that much, but I really liked being able to do a different kind of character. She was very magical and ethereal, and they kind of played with my voice, mechanized it a little bit. So that was really fun.
That's funny. That's a bond you and Sean must share now, that you both play giant talking trees in different games.
Right? I mean, I think as an actor, that's one of those things, because when you start out, right, in kids' plays, it's always like, you're a tree and you're a bunny, you're a cloud. So it's one of those things, like, you come full circle and you're like, I got to be a tree.
That's so awesome.
Really quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to say for everyone who's watching live, I apologize for the quality, but we're also recording a better version. So when you watch the edited interview, everything should look and sound a lot better and not be as choppy for the people that are watching live. Yeah. But for watching live, you'll have your questions answered at the end. So thank you for that. And not only are you and Sean, but he's also in the Secret of Mana game, isn't he?
I think so. I think he did a bunch of different characters in that one also, if I recall. He's a bit of a chameleon himself as far as his character skills go.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of what we were talking about just before we went live with how he does Rivali and the Great Deku Tree, because they're such different characters, the voices in Breath of the Wild. Whenever in Breath of the Wild you did the elderly Impa, but in Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, you do the younger Impa, and it's 2 completely different voices. Whenever Daniel and I first heard it, it took Joe to mention it the last time he was on, that it was the same voice actor. And Daniel and I, we just both had our minds blown at that point, because we were like, no way.
You can see it on screen as I'm like, what? That's the same actor? Like, yeah. Very much a testament to your skill.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I really appreciate that. And, just initially in the first one, because old Impa doesn't sound like this, there was a lot of, oh my gosh, that's you. Like, how awesome. And I've really dug how many people are still being surprised by that news, that I do both renditions of Impa in the Breath of the Wild games. So that's exciting.
And something else we mentioned as well is we felt a little bad because we didn't have you on before Age of Calamity with older Impa or talking about that role. Even though it's such an important thing, like you were the front and center of a lot of marketing with Impa's dialogue being in almost all the trailers for that game, for Breath of the Wild and everything. And I feel so bad that we never got around to it now.
Oh, that's okay.
I believe
Don't worry about it. And that was exciting to me too. Sorry, we're talking over each other. I do that. I babble.
We do it all the time. You're right at home here.
But yeah, with the Breath of the Wild, one of the first trailers in English that they put out, I believe it was before you hear Zelda or anyone else's voice, you hear Impa's voice telling the story. Like, this is the story of the Calamity or whatever the line is. I don't really remember. Yeah. But I remember hearing it in the trailer, and it reminded me of the first Hyrule Warriors because it had voice acting in it a little bit as well. And there was a lot of debate on whether Breath of the Wild was going to have full voice acting or if it was going to take the path of Hyrule Warriors to where it was just a narration. So there's a lot of debate in the community among the lines that you had for that first trailer until you started hearing the other voice actors.
Right, to know like, oh, is this all we're going to get? But it was very exciting to hear that I got to be the first voice in the trailer when that came out, because I didn't know, we don't know what cuts they're going to use and whatnot from the game. And I've told this story before, but it's so funny. A friend of mine, we've been friends forever, and they're still big fans of the Zelda franchise, and realized before I did that they were making a new Zelda game, and was like, so are you going to be in it? And I was like, I have no idea. I had said something about, I booked a video game, and he's like, I bet it's that. And I'm like, I did literally said nothing else. And the trailer came out and they recognized my voice, even though I'm sounding like a little old lady, because we've been friends, they're like, she's like my younger sister, basically. We grew up together. So she can still hear me in that. And she posted it, my friend. And I was like, no, we can't say anything yet. Take it down. I don't want to get in trouble. Because that was still, Impa was kind of a secret, a secret reveal in that game, as she also was in Age of Calamity, because they didn't say anything about her being a playable character until they did that gameplay. And she wasn't in the poster, any of the, because she's not a hero. So I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll just wait and see how they do this.
But she is a hero in my heart. She's the ultimate Lionel Slayer. So.
It's really, it must have been kind of, I don't want to say odd for you, but what was it like for you whenever in Breath of the Wild they had you play as Impa doing the one voice, and then when they had you come back and whenever we talked to people before, they said whenever they didn't really have to re-audition for Hyrule Warriors, but they were kind of told that it might be something else before it was revealed to be Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Mm-hmm. So they didn't actually know for sure that it was going to be like the next Breath of the Wild Zelda game or whatever. Right. But they ended up being able to go back and do the same voices again. But for you, whenever they had you come back, you're doing a completely different voice, but it's for the same character. Have you ever had to do something like that before, or was this like a first time for you doing the same character, but like a completely different take on it?
Oh yeah, definitely the first time ever. And I didn't know that I was going to be doing the younger version when I got into my first session. So I had called back my work as older Impa so that I could, make sure I wasn't digressing from her original sound and all of that. And then I got into the studio and I see young Impa on the screen, and I was so excited because I was like, oh, I think she might be more than just a narrator this time. Mm-hmm. So that was great. I got to do a ton of cutscenes and, lots of dubbing and the fighting efforts and all that stuff, which was so completely different than the big chunks of narration, and that's it in the previous game. So it's not, doing the same character 100 years apart is definitely something I've never done before.
I guess, did that really challenge the way that you view the character of Impa? Because I know for me personally, on the gamer side of things, going back to seeing how Impa was in Breath of the Wild and kind of how you almost kind of take her for granted in that story, no offense or anything, but then how central she is to Age of Calamity and how she's really, for lack of better words, she's really quite badass in that game. And it just really good. Then going back to Breath of the Wild, because I can't stop playing that game either, just seeing how, seeing those two sides of her made me think of her differently in the other game as well. Did you have any similar, I guess, impact, or did it shift your perspective in any way that way, or?
Well, I mean, a little bit, yeah, because I remember when we were in the studio finding the voice for old Impa, even though she's 112 or 20, something like that, we still landed on a voice that was more like a 70s, because she still had a younger energy about her. So now meeting her in this capacity and seeing what a great fighter she is, and her tenacity, and that makes a little more sense. Oh, I see. She wasn't really that old still, even though we don't really see her moving around. She's just chilling on her pillow. But she's like, I'm done. I'm tired.
That's relatable. Yeah,
I feel that way often.
Playing through the game, I couldn't believe how integral young Impa was to this story, because not just her, but the other young Sheik. I don't want to mispronounce her name, but Purah. Yeah, Purah. Those two seem to have the most comedic parts out of all of Hyrule Warriors, and watching just the cutscenes alone is just enough to where Breath of the Wild had more of a serious tone through all of the cutscenes. It's always Zelda. I don't want to say it's always her arguing with Link, and then Link obviously doesn't say anything back. But in this, it's Hyrule Warriors. Yeah, there's a lot more comedy, and then the whole the reoccurring Impa arguing with the little baby robot. Everyone compares it to Baby Yoda, but it's always hilarious to see them nitpicking at each other. And then, I can't say the spoiler at the end because some people haven't played through the whole game, but towards the end, there's a lot of funny parts as well after the serious parts. So it's really nice just to see that it isn't just, it's not really fan service from having this character from the first game, but it's bringing them in to be an even bigger part than you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really
to be I get to feel like a bigger part of the ensemble this time around, and actually being a playable character that has so many cool moves, and she really is a badass. I'm loving all the feedback from the fans on how much they're enjoying playing with her, fighting as her versus the other characters. It's just really fun. And I've never had a character in a game get this much, feedback and be quite such a badass like this. So
that's fair. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but she's my favorite character to play as, actually. And it's hilarious because you see her and Link on my own file are level 80 or something like that, and all my other characters I keep having to go and go to the training camp and just force level them up because I just haven't been using them as much. And it's really quite a hard bias, but yeah, she's a very dynamic, very cool character to play as. Absolutely my favorite. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We just got a donation in from RPG who says, really awesome to have Andy on the cast to talk about her experience. Amazing job.
Oh, thank you, RPG.
Yeah. So with what he's saying, your overall experience, what would you say the biggest difference was recording with Breath of the Wild and then with Age of Calamity? Because not just the different voices you have to do, but was the experience from, I don't know if you had to go into the studio or if you had to record from your house or what the experience was like, but how was it different this time around?
Well, I did go into the studio, and definitely with the pandemic, there was a big difference in that no one else was there.
Oh.
It was just me, and I mean, we record individually anyway as actors. It's very rare that, you know, maybe if you're on an episodic for animation, some of those will still do ensemble cast, but usually we're recording by ourselves anyway. But it was just me and the studio tech at 48 Windows, and they did a great job with all of their, you know, sanitizing and everything. Nobody touched any of my stuff. I was in my own little bubble and all that. But normally you would have the director there with you, and then we'd have some Nintendo people possibly in the room or, you know, in my cans, but everybody was in the cans and I was just in the room. So that was different. And we had a different director for this game. So he had a bit of a different style, but almost virtually everything I had to do was dubbing and matching the lip flaps, where with older Impa, so much Impa, I don't know what that was. There's so much narration stuff with other visuals happening that I didn't have to do a ton of that lip flap, you know, dubbing, matching stuff. So with the timing and getting it to look right, it's such an interesting, very different voiceover skill that I was happy to work on. But it's a bear to be like, well, we got to try and match the lips up, but they're speaking completely different language. Here we go. And of course, all the fighting efforts, that was something I'd never really done, you know, just pre-recording tons of different fighting efforts for all the different moves that she does. You know, even though my characters fought in Shaq Fu, we didn't have a ton of that going. And it was, you know, that's a bit of a lower budget game anyway. But, you know, it was like, whoa. I guess I'm done with that story.
That was good.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned Shaq Fu, because I remember whenever they first announced the trailer for it, it was, how many years ago was it? I just remember like he was on the trailer and it was almost like he looked at it not as a joke, but he knew and understood that there was the older game, right? That a lot of people like, yeah, like
it was a flop. I think we can confidently say that.
But it had a cult following. That's what it was.
Right.
That's what I was trying to think of. Where like it was one of like a movie that people watched that was so bad that they just had to get all their friends to watch it. And then whenever they tried to remake it with the newer version in the trailer, they were kind of playing on the fact that everyone kind of knew that game as like almost a flop. I don't want to say a joke; it feels bad, but yeah. I love that they played into the comedy of it in the trailer.
Exactly, and that's why I think it was so important to him to make a new one. He wanted to make a new one that he had more control in, and he actually recorded in the studio and everything. So
yeah,
I imagine they had to get on a ladder to adjust his microphone.
With Age of Calamity and also Breath of the Wild as well, since we didn't have you on to talk about Breath of the Wild, with both of the games, what would your favorite experience be with those? Whether it's like a certain line that you loved or like because of being in Breath of the Wild, maybe another job got offered to you that you may have not gotten before, or like what did you find in the whole process that you enjoyed the most with Breath of the Wild and then Age of Calamity?
Well, I do really enjoy getting into character voices, and so, you know, I'm not doing big monsters and stuff like that, but I get to do old ladies. I've done a small handful of old ladies now, and so it's fun when you get to find a real, you know, gritty character. I don't know if gritty is the right word, but like sink your teeth into a character voice like that, and then have a lot of dialogue to play around with. So that was fun, just having good bulky narration to play with in this character voice. And then after the fact, once it was released, just how beautiful it was and how popular, that when someone, you know, I was finding gamers all over the place that just were like, they were treating me like a celebrity because they discovered that I played that character in the game. And that was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. You know, Zelda fans are so awesome and just so into all the games that I remember I was in Atlanta at a voiceover conference, and we were in a Lyft riding back to the hotel after dinner. And my friend shouted out something like, oh, you know, what do you guys do? What are you here for? Blah, blah, blah. So it came out actors, and she's like, oh yeah, she's in Legend Breath of the Wild. He almost crashed the car. He was like so excited that he's driving, and he was like, what? Like turned around. I'm like, hey dude, you're driving, you know, calm down. So he was like, oh, he was
sadly,
just,
I feel like that could have been
like,
me
I
as
love
well.
that game. I'm playing the game right now. Oh my God, you know. So that's been fun.
Scary, but fun.
But and then this has been such a completely different experience. I mean, people are still really excited about it, and I love that. And you know, chatting with the fans on Twitter and answering questions and doing interviews and stuff like that the first time, because like you guys said, you thought that the actress was actually an older lady and wouldn't be interested in that, but it's me. Hi. So that's been a lot of fun. I just, I'm finally getting people getting autographs off of my website. And, you know, I've just mailed off my first one yesterday, or I'm going to tomorrow. And so that's fun stuff. And if any of you guys have requests for like different images that you'd like to see, you know, maybe a screenshot from the game or something like that for as autograph options, let me know, because I'd love to. I'll throw those up there too.
Yeah, we'll totally do that.
Yeah, and then I like the fighting efforts. That just was so cool to me, because that wasn't any dubbing. We just did those blind, but because the moves are, you know, only a certain amount of time. I'm also a singer, so anything with timing, I'm like, let's do this. Like, we got to get it right, you know? And it was like, okay, on this one, you have 0.01 second, or like something insane.
No pressure.
Like, okay, well, we've got to, you know, shorten this to something else, you know? And some of them, even that move she does all the time, steal yourself.
Yes.
Nobody realized that that's what she was saying so fast still. So they thought it was steer yourself. And I'm like, oh no, it's actually steal yourself, because I remember that. And when you have to do it so fast, you really have to enunciate. Otherwise, it just sounds like gobbledygook, you know, and they're like, what is she saying?
Actually, if I can interject for a moment, we got another super chat.
That's what I was going to mention as well.
Oh, is it? Okay. Birdman donated $4.99. He asked, well, two things. One, he actually just said, steal yourself, I am ready. Right before you said that. Also, Birdman asked, if you had the chance to, how would you voice the character of Paya from Breath of the Wild?
Oh, I think Paya would be a little bit more like, you know, like a valley girl, teen girl. I think the way that Miss Thing did her was fantastic. I thought as soon as I heard her voice, I was like, how cute, who's that? I love her. So
that's adorable.
Are all your ears bleeding now? You're welcome.
Yeah. Also, to answer really quick, because they might not have been here at the beginning, someone in the comments says the video is really low quality. I apologize for that. There's a weird issue with the Wi-Fi, but Daniel is doing a second recording.
Yes.
So after the live stream, we will upload a higher quality version for everyone to watch. That'll have better audio and video for everyone.
It's probably my fault.
I apologize for that. No, it is completely my fault. I must be too far away from the Wi-Fi router. But you were answering actually about how you would voice Paya. So whenever you did the original voice for Impa, how did you sort of come to find that voice? And were there other voices that you tried before you fell onto the one that you ended up doing, or was it a suggestion from the producers or the people at the studio, or what was that experience like?
Well, we just kind of started, I realized she was younger, of course, when I saw her. It all just kind of happened in the studio organically, and I worked with the director, Jeremy Hall, on finding her voice right before we started recording. And we didn't take much time with it. I started right in where I speak normally, and then we adjusted it just a little bit. But I do feel like she sounds a lot like me, like my natural voice, which is exciting because I do character voices a lot. So it's like, oh, hey, this one, she actually sounds like me. So if anyone were to play the game, they're like, I know who that is. So that's kind of fun. But we did, there were bits when I get excited and when I need to project, my voice gets higher. I'm a soprano, so that just happens naturally. And Jeremy would keep having to pull me down a little bit because we didn't want to get into Paya territory because that's a different character. But we are sisters, so I feel like our timbres match pretty well to be, related. But that was the only thing. She's just a little more grounded and a little more serious than Paya. So we wanted to make sure to keep that separate. That's all.
Daniel, do you have a question before I ask mine?
I did have a question, but through all the rambling, it basically got answered already. So you can go ahead.
I was going to ask, when you first got into voice acting, what was sort of your mindset? And you also mentioned that you were a singer as well. So how long have you been in this career?
Oh, dare I date myself? But I actually started acting officially in music videos back in the 80s. I did the Gypsy video for Fleetwood Mac, and I was in the Heart Attack video for Olivia Newton-John. I know I may be baffling the minds of many young gamers right now who don't know those videos, but
no, I love Fleetwood Mac, actually.
That one still plays on the radio. Is what's it called? 10cc was a band, and I had a little teeny cameo in that video. She's a Beauty, 1 in a million girl, and they still play that one on the radio too. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, my childhood will never leave me. But and then officially was in the studio recording vocals for a cartoon when I was 7 for the first time. And so that's, my family is show people. My parents met doing Jesus Christ Superstar together in New York back in the 70s. So my mom found out she was pregnant when she was on tour with Bob Dylan, singing background for him. So just show people. So then my god uncle, or as we say, gunkle, as for gay uncle, but Kenny Ortega was directing music videos back then before the Michael Jackson tour and all that. And so when they wanted a little girl, they would call my mom and be like, okay, we've got something for Andi. And they threw me on set. When I was very shy, I didn't have lines or anything at that point. So But growing up with a loudmouth show mom, I ended up having to come out of my shell and kind of hold my own. So I've been doing it for a very long time. I sang in theme parks in Japan for Universal and Hollywood, and did Disney for many years, and sang on a cruise ship. And I've sung background and in, all-star choirs behind Barbara Streisand and all kinds of stuff. All that, I think all that fun stuff's on my website. So, but voiceover, that first time in the recording studio as a singer is when voiceover kind of sparked in my brain, because they wanted me to do the voice for the lead character in the cartoon, and then it never happened. So when I just got to sing the Thundercats theme song, Thundercats Roar theme song, it like came full circle, because I was like, oh my gosh, how many years later, and this is actually happening now. So that was pretty fun. But I think when I started voiceover, one of my shows at Disney was closing, and I was like, okay, I'm finally going to try this, because I've been hearing for years how I should get into voiceover, and I'm finally going to do it now. And I thought I would start with animation, because I have such a character sound naturally, and I do dialects and character voices. But what popped off first was commercials, and I was surprised by that, but I wasn't going to say no. So I just kept on going, and then video games followed quickly after. And I still, to this day, haven't done much animation, but I've done some of the Super Wings shows, which is for the little ones like 3 to 5, and I can't remember a couple other things. Oh, I got to be Jane Jetson, but that was in a commercial, so it was still a commercial thing, but that was a fun voice match for LG. So anyways, I'm babbling again.
Jane Jetson, that's a throwback.
No.
I know, God, and I was so excited because I always loved the Jetsons. I grew up watching reruns of the Jetsons. So I was excited to be Judy in that commercial. And then they didn't want me for Judy. They decided they wanted me for Jane. And I was like, oh, okay. And when I saw the commercial, Judy only had one line and Jane had the whole commercial. It was like her birthday in the commercial. So I was like, oh my God, how exciting. And then the nerves came. Because I was like, okay, talk about legacy character. Jeebus. And there were, 10 people from the Korea team there in the room. And I was like, oh man, I hope they like this. I better not screw it up.
That's awesome.
I don't know about Daniel, but you blew my mind so many times during that. All of the different things that you mentioned, one after another. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that.
Yeah. So just keep on plugging. And in school, I was always kind of a triple threat. And now, since I'm not a dancer anymore, I'm still a triple threat in that I do the voiceover and the singing. And I don't remember what the other thing was. Dog walking. I guess that's my third.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Oh, I guess on camera acting. So it still counts as acting.
There you go.
Yeah.
Jesse, were you going to say something?
I was just going to ask a random question. I remembered some of the questions that some people asked earlier. So I was just going to go and ask one of them. But I didn't want to interrupt because I can't see you on the video.
Oh, no.
So I don't know when you're about to start talking, because usually I can just watch and tell from everyone's body language when they're about to start saying something, but my screen's
Oops, that's okay.
But yeah, so one of the co-hosts for the podcast that was wanting to be on here earlier before she realized that it might contain some spoilers that she wanted to avoid is, with all of the experience that you've had, what would be some unique advice that you would give to someone who is just starting or wanting to get into? Because for those that are familiar with the podcast or that may not know, the Geek Apprentice, her username, if you want to go look her up, is I would say would you say amateur voice actor?
She's been in some. I would say she's in her early. She started getting a few good paid gigs and stuff. So I don't know if I would say amateur anymore, but she only recently got started into it. But But I know she would be super thrilled. I think you two would get along famously, actually, Andy. But because there's quite a lot of similarities. She's also a dancer and a singer as well. So yeah, I'm sure she would. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead, Jesse. No,
I was gonna say she does a lot of on-stage choreographing and dancing and stuff with her performances. But she was really excited to come on, and then she realized that she hadn't played through much of the game and didn't want to have the spoilers. But her question that she wanted me to ask was about advice that you would offer to someone else who might be wanting to learn voice acting or take their first dive into it.
Yeah, I started doing coaching not too long ago, and was pulling together classes and things like that. And now I still coach, but I do more one-on-one via Skype. And it's kind of like a crash course into how to start your voiceover career. And it's basically just my take on it, how it worked for me. And what I tell my students in that class is that you really have to start with acting, because that has to be the foundation for everything. A lot of people don't realize that voiceover is not just reading off of a page, because everyone can do that. Mm-hmm. And it's not always riveting. So you have to fall back on your acting skills in order to bring what's on the page to life and to give the client what they're looking for, and, make sure the character's intention is there and all of those things. And a lot of people just want to start, hit the ground running straight into voiceover without any acting training. And that's always my first thing, was if you haven't had any acting at all, go back and do some of that first, and you'll be much more well equipped to work in voiceover, because we don't have any of the other tools that are given to you when you're on camera or on stage. We're not working with lights. We're not working very often with another actor, even in a scene. We're not working with makeup or costumes or sets. All of that needs to be brought from your own actor's tool bag, if you will. So that's number one nugget.
I think that's sage advice. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anything further, Jesse?
Daniel?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No.
Cool.
I think I covered.
That's it for now, but a lot of rumors, news, and details are slowly leaking out. So please, stay subscribed and notified, and join our Discord to make sure you stay up to date on all Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 news. And you can find our Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫, here on YouTube and on iTunes, where we have had many guests who have worked on the Zelda series, and have shared a lot of amazing stories about voice acting, such as Patricia Somerset voice acting as Zelda, Mike Drucker on Zelda's writing or translation team, coming up with the jokes in the game, stories behind the names of characters that he created. Please subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you. If you are a fan of our Zelda videos like this, Zelda Theories, our Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫 on iTunes, we would all really appreciate your support at patreon.com/GameOverJesse. That and buying our t-shirts will get you and your YouTube or Twitch a shout out every week on our 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫. And if you send in a photo of yourself in our Game Over Jesse or 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐿𝐽𝐽𝐾ast t-shirt, we can use it for promotion at the end of some of our videos.